I thought my son's birthday gift was a gesture of love until I discovered it was actually meant to destroy me. My name is Sarah, and I'm 58 years old. 3 months ago, I was holding this bottle of 25-year-old single malt whiskey, reading a note that said, "Happy birthday, Mom. Hope this helps you forget your mistakes." At the time, I thought it was just my son being thoughtless. I had no idea. He was trying to kill me. What I found out about that whiskey 3 months later changed everything I thought I knew about my own son. You see, I am a recovering alcoholic, 5 years sober, and Michael knew exactly what that bottle represented. You tried to kill me, Michael, your own mother. But here's what he didn't expect. I never drank a single drop. And when his father-in-law did, well, let's just say karma has a twisted sense of humor. By the end of this story, you'll understand why sometimes the people closest to us are the ones we should fear most, and how one act of kindness saved my life while destroying his. Let me take you back to the beginning so you understand how deep this betrayal really goes, because this isn't just about poison in a whiskey bottle. This is about the slow, methodical destruction of a mother's love by her own child. 2 years ago, I lost my husband Tom to pancreatic cancer. 42 years of marriage. And suddenly I was sitting alone in a house that felt too big, too quiet, too empty. Tom wasn't just my husband. He was my best friend, my confidant, my anchor in every storm life threw at us. The cancer took 14 months to kill him. 14 months of watching the strongest man I knew waste away to nothing. 14 months of hospitals, treatments, hope, despair, and finally, acceptance. I held his hand when he took his last breath, and something inside me died. The grief was unbearable. You know how people say time heals all wounds? They're lying. Time just teaches you to carry the weight differently. But I didn't know that then. All I knew was that the pain was crushing me, and there was a bottle of wine in the kitchen that made it hurt a little less. It started innocent enough. A glass with dinner to help me sleep, then 2 glasses. Then I was drinking wine like water and buying vodka like groceries. Not just social drinking or even heavy drinking. I'm talking about wake up with a bottle, pass out in Tom's chair, can't remember if I ate today kind of drinking. Rock bottom came on a Tuesday. I'd been drinking for 3 days straight, barely conscious, when I somehow drove to the cemetery. Don't ask me how I made it there alive. I still have nightmares about what could have happened. I woke up at dawn, lying on Tom's grave, covered in my own vomit, with a groundskeeper standing over me asking if I needed an ambulance. That was my moment of clarity. Tom would have been ashamed of what I'd become. The woman he'd loved for 4 decades wouldn't have recognized the drunk lying in the dirt. That day, I drove myself to my first AA meeting. That was 5 years ago. 5 years of daily meetings, therapy sessions, sponsor calls, and rebuilding my life one day at a time. My son Michael, he was my hero during those dark months. He was 27 then, working as an accountant, dating Jessica, but not yet married. He drove me to meetings when I was too shaky to drive myself. He cleaned vomit out of my carpets without complaining. He held me while I cried and promised me it would get better. Michael was the reason I got sober. I couldn't bear to disappoint him the way I disappointed Tom's memory. But people change. Or maybe they just show you who they really were all along. Michael married Jessica 3 years ago. She's 29, works in marketing, comes from money. Her father, Frank, owns a chain of car dealerships across 3 states. From the moment I met her, I could tell she saw me as an obstacle, not just to Michael's attention, but to something deeper. At their engagement party, I overheard her talking to her mother. Michael's inheritance will be substantial once his mother passes. The house alone is worth $500,000, and that's not counting Tom's life insurance or their retirement accounts. I pretended not to hear, but the words stuck with me. Jessica wasn't just marrying my son. She was making an investment. After they married, the subtle campaign began. Little comments during family dinners. "Your mother seems lonely, Michael. Maybe she should consider a senior community where she'd have more social interaction." Or, "Sarah looks tired. Are you sure she's managing okay on her own?" At first, I thought she was just being concerned, maybe even jealous of the close relationship Michael and I had. But looking back now, I can see she was planting seeds, making Michael question my competence, my independence, my right to live in my own home. And slowly, terrifyingly, Michael started believing her. My sweet boy who used to call me every Sunday became a stranger who visited twice a month. Our long conversations about his job, his dreams, his worries became polite check-ins. "How are you feeling, Mom? Are you eating enough? Do you need help with anything?" It was like talking to a social worker instead of my son. The change was so gradual, I told myself it was natural. He was a married man now, building his own life. Of course he couldn't be as attentive to his mother. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. I just couldn't put my finger on what. Which brings us to 3 months ago, March 15th, my 58th birthday. I wasn't expecting much, maybe a card, a phone call. I'd learned to keep my expectations low to avoid disappointment. I was making myself a quiet dinner for one when the doorbell rang. Michael was standing on my porch, and for a moment he looked like my little boy again. He was holding a beautifully wrapped box with a silk ribbon, and there was genuine excitement in his eyes. "Happy birthday, Mom. I got you something special." My heart actually skipped a beat. When was the last time I'd seen him genuinely excited about anything involving me? Maybe this was it. Maybe whatever had been building between us was finally breaking down. I should have known right then. Michael had never, not once in 5 years of sobriety, brought alcohol into my house. But I was so desperate for my son's love, I ignored every red flag waving in front of my face. Inside that beautiful box was a bottle of Glenfiddich 25 years single malt. Not just any whiskey, the exact same brand Tom and I used to share on our anniversary, our special tradition for 20 years of marriage. $400 worth of liquid temptation sitting in my hands like a loaded gun. "Honey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "you know I don't drink anymore." Michael's response still haunts my dreams. He got this look in his eyes, cold, calculating, like he was studying a lab specimen. "It's for special occasions, Mom. Dad would have wanted you to celebrate." Using Tom's memory like that, it was like a knife twisted in an old wound. My husband had supported my sobriety completely. In his final weeks, when the pain was unbearable and I was tempted to drink just to cope with watching him die, Tom made me promise to stay strong. "Sarah," he whispered with what little voice he had left, "don't let grief kill you too. Michael needs his mother." And now Michael was using those sacred memories to try to break my sobriety. But what really terrified me was Jessica. She was standing behind Michael in my living room, and I swear I saw her smirk. Just for a second, but I saw it. Like she was watching a private joke unfold. I made a decision that saved my life, though I didn't know it at the time. Fighting every instinct that wanted to pour that whiskey down the sink, I forced myself to smile. "Thank you, sweetheart. It's beautiful, and it means so much that you remembered Dad's favorite. I'll keep it somewhere special as a reminder of both of you." Michael's face fell. Actually fell, like I disappointed him. "You're not even going to try it? Not even a sip?" It's 25 years old, Mom. It's probably smoother than anything you and Dad ever had. No, honey, but it's beautiful, and I'll treasure it. That was line number one. I didn't treasure it. It terrified me more than anything had in 5 years. Jessica stepped forward then, putting her arm around Michael's waist. Maybe you could save it for Christmas, Sarah, or New Year's. Something festive. She was pushing, actually pushing for me to drink. I placed the bottle on my mantel, right next to Tom's photograph. There, now Dad can keep an eye on it for me. The look that passed between Michael and Jessica in that moment, if I'd been smarter, if I'd been more suspicious, I would have seen it for what it was. Disappointment, frustration, the look of a plan that wasn't going according to schedule. Instead, I made dinner. We ate pot roast and talked about Michael's work, Jessica's latest promotion, their plans for a vacation to Europe. Normal family conversation. But underneath it all, I could feel them watching me, studying me. The visit started the next week. Michael, who'd barely called in months, was suddenly showing up twice a week. Always unexpected. Always with some excuse. He was in the neighborhood. He brought groceries. He wanted to check on me. But he wasn't checking on me. He was checking on that bottle. Every visit, his eyes would go to the mantel. Every conversation included questions about my health, my sleep, my appetite. Always solicitous, always concerned, always with that clinical detachment I'd learned to recognize. You sure you're okay, Mom? You look tired. Are you eating enough? You seem thinner. Maybe you should see a doctor. You seem different lately. And then I started getting sick. Little things at first. Dizzy spells when I'd stand up too quickly, nausea that came in waves, headaches that wouldn't go away no matter how much water I drank or how many aspirin I took. At first, I thought it was stress. Grief has a way of manifesting physically, and Tom's second anniversary was approaching. But the timing was too coincidental. Every time I felt worst was after one of Michael's visits. My neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, mentioned seeing Michael at my house when I wasn't home. "Oh, honey," she said over the fence while I was watering my roses, "your boy is so good to you. He was here yesterday while you were at your doctor's appointment, probably just checking on things." I hadn't told Michael about my doctor's appointment. I hadn't told anyone. That's when the pieces started falling into place, one terrifying revelation at a time. Michael had been in my house multiple times when I wasn't there. How did he even know when I'd be gone? I started paying attention to things I'd been ignoring. My medicine cabinet, which I always keep meticulously organized, had bottles in different positions. My coffee maker, which I clean religiously, sometimes had residue I didn't remember leaving. Small things, things you'd only notice if you were looking. I caught him once. Came home early from a dental appointment to find Michael coming out of my kitchen looking flustered and guilty. "Mom, you're back early." "Just got done sooner than expected. What are you doing here, honey?" "I was getting a glass of water. Hope you don't mind." But my kitchen faucet was dry, and the cabinet where I keep my medications, the one I always close completely, was slightly ajar. That night, I sat on my couch in the dark, staring at that bottle of whiskey on my mantel, and a terrible understanding washed over me. My son wasn't visiting because he cared about me. He was visiting to monitor me, to see if his plan was working, to check if I was dying yet. The whiskey wasn't a gift. It was bait, and I was the prey. Once you realize someone is trying to hurt you, you can't unknow it. Every interaction becomes suspect. Every kindness feels like manipulation. Every concern sounds like a threat. Michael's campaign escalated with the subtlety of a surgeon's knife. The accidents started multiplying. He'd bring wine to family dinners, setting it right in front of me with an apologetic smile. "Oh, I forgot you don't drink anymore. Sorry, Mom." But these weren't accidents. They were tests. How strong was my resolve? How close to breaking was I? Jessica's role became clearer too. She'd make comments about me seeming unwell and confused in front of others. The mailman, neighbors, the pharmacist, always with this concerned, loving tone that made her sound like the perfect daughter-in-law worried about her aging mother-in-law. Sarah's been so forgetful lately. Last week she called asking if we'd had dinner plans when we'd just spoken about it an hour before. Except we hadn't spoken. That conversation never happened. They were building a narrative, painting a picture of a declining older woman who couldn't be trusted to care for herself. And everyone was buying it because, frankly, who suspects a son and daughter-in-law of elder abuse? The medical manipulation was the most insidious part. I'd been having those dizzy spells and nausea, so I made an appointment with Dr. Martinez, my physician, for 15 years. A woman who'd seen me through Tom's cancer, my alcoholism recovery, and 5 years of sobriety. But when I walked into her office, something was different. She looked at me with pity instead of respect. "Sarah, your son called me yesterday. He's very concerned about you." Michael had spoken to my doctor, privately, without my knowledge or consent. He told her he was worried I was drinking again, that I was becoming forgetful, paranoid, not taking proper care of myself. He mentioned you've been having some difficulties, memory issues, confusion about dates and times. Have you been experiencing any urges to drink? Any thoughts about alcohol? I sat in that sterile office, looking at a woman I'd trusted for over a decade, realizing she now saw me as a fragile, unreliable old woman instead of the strong, sober person I'd worked so hard to become. Dr. Martinez ordered cognitive tests, blood work to check for signs of alcohol use. She prescribed anxiety medication and suggested I might benefit from additional support managing my day-to-day activities. When I left her office, I felt like I was losing my mind. Was I actually declining? Was I imagining things? Were the dizzy spells and confusion signs of something more serious? That afternoon, I found power of attorney paperwork in my mailbox. Legal documents that would give Michael complete control over my finances and medical decisions. The covering letter, supposedly from a law firm, said the documents had been prepared at your request and needed to be signed and returned within 10 days. I hadn't requested any such thing. I called the law firm. They'd never heard of me, but they had received a request for these documents from someone claiming to be my son, acting on behalf of his increasingly incompetent mother. That's when I knew this wasn't just about pushing me to drink. Michael wanted me declared mentally incompetent. He wanted legal control over everything Tom and I had worked 30 years to build. I called my bank immediately, First National, where Tom and I had banked for 25 years, where everyone knew us by name. Mrs. Chen, the manager, sounded uncomfortable when I asked about my accounts. "Well, Sarah, we have had some inquiries. Your son contacted us about setting up financial oversight. He seemed very worried about some of your recent decisions." "What decisions?" "Well, he mentioned you've been making some unusual purchases, large cash withdrawals. He was concerned someone might be taking advantage of you." I hadn't made any unusual purchases. I hadn't made any large cash withdrawals. My banking habits hadn't changed in 5 years. But Michael was systematically destroying my credibility with everyone who mattered. My doctor, my bank, my neighbors. He was isolating me, making me seem unreliable, preparing the ground for a competency hearing. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and started writing down everything I could remember. Every strange visit, every odd comment, every time I'd felt sick after Michael had been in my house. The pattern was undeniable. But Michael had made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated his mother. I went to Best Buy the next day and bought a small digital recorder, the kind private investigators use, no bigger than a pack of gum. I started carrying it in my pocket during every interaction with Michael and Jessica. I also ordered a small security camera online. Nothing fancy, just a basic device that could hide behind my bookshelf and record everything that happened in my living room. Specifically, everything that happened near that bottle of whiskey. Within a week, I had my first piece of concrete evidence. I'd pretended to go to the bathroom during one of Michael's visits, leaving my phone recording on the kitchen counter. What I heard when I played it back made my hands shake so badly I almost dropped the device. Jessica's voice. "How much longer do you think this will take?" Michael. "He's not drinking. I don't understand it. He should have cracked by now. The dose I've been giving her should be making her desperate for relief." Jessica. "Maybe we need to increase it or find another approach." Michael. "I've been adding it to her coffee grounds every time I visit. She drinks 3 cups a day minimum. It should be working." My coffee. He'd been poisoning my coffee. That's why I'd been sick. That's why the dizzy spells and nausea always happened after his visits. He wasn't just waiting for me to drink the whiskey. He was slowly poisoning me anyway, making me desperate enough that eventually I'd reach for alcohol to numb the symptoms. But what came next froze my blood. What if she never drinks? What if she's stronger than we thought? Then we moved to Plan B. Old people have accidents all the time. Falls downstairs, gas leaks, house fires. Are you serious? Dead serious. I'm not waiting 5 more years for her to die naturally. We need that money now. My son, my baby boy, the child I'd carried for 9 months, nursed through every illness, cheered for at every baseball game, was planning to murder me. That recording changed everything. I wasn't just fighting for my sobriety anymore, or even my independence. I was fighting for my life. But you know what? After 42 years of marriage to a man who taught me that problems have solutions, and 5 years of AA teaching me that I'm stronger than I think, I wasn't about to go down without a fight. I started researching everything. What substances could be added to coffee that would cause dizziness and nausea? What could be mixed with alcohol that would be undetectable? What would show up in an autopsy and what wouldn't? I reached out to my old friend Helen, who'd worked as an emergency room nurse for 40 years before retiring. We'd lost touch after Tom died, but nurses understand crisis. "Sarah, honey, there are dozens of substances that could be added to food or drink. Some cause gradual organ failure, others mimic natural illness. Ethylene glycol, that's antifreeze, is particularly nasty because it's sweet, odorless, and causes symptoms that look like flu or anxiety." Helen, hypothetically, if someone wanted to poison alcohol specifically, what would they use? Well, antifreeze would be the obvious choice. It's available anywhere, and alcoholics often die from accidental poisoning anyway. Makes for a very convenient cover story. I couldn't tell her the truth yet, but I kept digging, learning everything I could about poisons, investigation techniques, and legal evidence requirements. Meanwhile, I installed that camera in my living room, hidden behind a picture frame Tom had given me for our anniversary. It had a perfect view of my mantel and that bottle of whiskey. The first night, nothing happened. The second night, nothing. But on the third night, at 2:47 a.m., according to the timestamp, my camera caught something that made my blood run cold. Michael had let himself into my house with his emergency key. He moved through my living room like he owned it, went straight to that whiskey bottle and unscrewed the cap. From a small vial in his pocket, he added what looked like clear liquid. Then he resealed the bottle, wiped it clean, and positioned it exactly as it had been. My son, standing in my living room at 3 in the morning, adding poison to alcohol meant for his mother. I watched that footage 20 times, crying for the little boy I'd raised, the man I thought I knew. The person on that recording wasn't my Michael. He was a stranger wearing my son's face, capable of unthinkable evil. But grief wouldn't save me. Evidence would. Over the next 2 weeks, I documented everything. The camera caught Michael tampering with the bottle 4 more times, each time adding more of whatever poison he was using. I recorded our conversations. I photographed the coffee grounds in my kitchen before and after his visits, noting the subtle color changes that indicated contamination. I had him dead to rights, enough evidence to send him to prison for attempted murder. But I wanted more than justice. I wanted poetic justice. That's when inspiration struck, courtesy of Jessica's own big mouth. During one of our forced family dinners, Jessica was complaining about her father Frank's drinking habits, how he was 62 with liver problems but refused to quit alcohol, how he always wanted to try expensive whiskey, but her mother Louise wouldn't let him buy it because of the cost. Dad keeps talking about this 25-year-old single malt he read about in some magazine. Says it's on his bucket list, but Mom says $400 for a bottle of liquor is ridiculous when he shouldn't be drinking anyway. $400. 25-year-old single malt. The exact same whiskey sitting on my mantel. What if Frank got to try that bucket list whiskey after all? What if that poisoned bottle found its way to someone who actually deserved Michael's attention? I spent the next week planning every detail. First, I had to convince Michael that his psychological warfare was working, that I was finally breaking down under the pressure. I started answering the door in my bathrobe more often, pretending to be confused about what day it was. I left dishes in the sink, stopped combing my hair properly, forgot appointments that I'd never actually made. "Mom, are you okay? You seem different." "I'm just tired, honey. So tired all the time. Sometimes I think maybe one drink wouldn't hurt, just to help me sleep better." Michael's eyes lit up like Christmas morning when I said that. He thought he was winning, finally breaking down his stubborn mother's resistance. "Maybe that's not such a bad idea, Mom. Dad always said a little whiskey helps you sleep." "But I shouldn't. My sponsor would be so disappointed." "Your sponsor doesn't have to know everything, does she?" There it was, my son actively encouraging me to break my sobriety. While I was playing the role of declining victim, I was also building an airtight case. The hidden camera captured everything. Michael's late-night visits, his tampering with the bottle, his increasingly desperate attempts to get me to drink. I started recording our phone conversations too, using an app Helen's grandson recommended. Michael's concern about my health sounded very different when you knew he was the cause of my symptoms. But the masterstroke came when I called Jessica to arrange a dinner party. "Hi, Jessica. It's Sarah. I was wondering if you and Frank would like to come over for dinner this weekend. Maybe Saturday evening?" "Oh, well, I suppose we could do that. Is there a special occasion?" "Actually, there is. I've been thinking about what you said about Frank wanting to try expensive whiskey. I have that bottle Michael gave me, and since I'm never going to drink it, well, it seems selfish to let it sit there when someone would truly appreciate it." The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. "Sarah, that's very generous of you. But are you sure? Michael spent a lot of money on that bottle." "Which is exactly why it should go to someone who'll enjoy it properly. What do you think? Saturday at 6? I'll make my famous pot roast and tell Frank to bring his appetite for good whiskey." I spent that week preparing for the performance of my life. Every detail had to be perfect. The evidence had to be bulletproof. And Michael had to walk into his own trap without suspecting a thing. Saturday evening, the night that would change everything. Michael was about to learn that sometimes the best revenge is simply giving people exactly what they deserve. Saturday evening, March 25th, the night that would either save my life or end it. I'd spent the entire day preparing Tom's famous pot roast recipe, the one he'd perfected over 20 years of weekend dinners. I set the table with our good china, the Wedgwood pattern we'd gotten for our wedding and only used for special occasions. That bottle of poisoned whiskey sat prominently on the dining room table like a centerpiece, gleaming under the chandelier light. 25 years of aging, destined to destroy whoever drank it. Frank arrived first at exactly 6 o'clock. He's a big man, 6'2", maybe 250, with the kind of booming voice and firm handshake that comes from 40 years of selling cars. The kind of man who fills up a room just by walking into it. His eyes went immediately to the whiskey. "Sarah, is that what I think it is?" "Glenfiddich 25-year single malt. Michael picked it out especially." Frank's eyes widened like a kid seeing Christmas presents. "My God, that's a $400 bottle. Sarah, you can't be serious about giving this away." "Frank, I'm more serious than I've ever been about anything." Jessica and Michael arrived together 15 minutes later. I could see Michael's confusion the moment he walked into the dining room and saw that bottle on the table instead of the mantel. "Mom, what's the whiskey doing here?" "Oh, I thought it would be perfect for tonight. Tom's famous pot roast recipe, the one he'd perfected over 20 years of weekend dinners." I set the table with our good china, the Wedgwood pattern we'd gotten for our wedding and only used for special occasions. That bottle of poison whiskey sat prominently on the dining room table like a centerpiece, gleaming under the chandelier light. 25 years of aging, destined to destroy whoever drank it. Frank arrived first at exactly 6 o'clock. He's a big man, 6'2", maybe 250, with the kind of booming voice and firm handshake that comes from 40 years of selling cars. The kind of man who fills up a room just by walking into it. His eyes went immediately to the whiskey. "Sarah, is that what I think it is?" "Glenfiddich 25-year single malt. Michael picked it out especially." Frank's eyes widened like a kid seeing Christmas presents. "My God, that's a $400 bottle. Sarah, you can't be serious about giving this away." "Frank, I'm more serious than I've ever been about anything." Jessica and Michael arrived together 15 minutes later. I could see Michael's confusion the moment he walked into the dining room and saw that bottle on the table instead of the mantel. "Mom, what's the whiskey doing here?" "Oh, I thought it would be perfect for tonight. Tom's famous pot roast recipe, the one he'd perfected over 20 years of weekend dinners." I set the table with our good china, the wedge wood pattern we'd gotten for our wedding and only used for special occasions. That bottle of poison whiskey sat prominently on the dining room table like a centerpiece, gleaming under the chandelier light. 25 years of aging, destined to destroy whoever drank it. Michael stepped closer, his voice taking on an edge I'd never heard before. "Mom, please, keep the bottle, put it back on the mantel where it belongs." "Michael, what's wrong? You seem upset. I thought you'd be happy that your thoughtful gift is going to someone who'll truly savor it." That's when Jessica, bless her heart, made the error that sealed their fate. She was so focused on getting Michael's inheritance that she couldn't see the bigger picture. "Frank, don't be rude. If Sarah wants to give you the whiskey, accept it graciously. It's a very expensive bottle." Michael shot Jessica a look that could have melted steel, but it was too late. Frank was already examining the bottle like it was a precious artifact. 25 years old, he marveled. "Sarah, this is museum quality. Are you absolutely certain?" "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Michael made one last desperate attempt. "What if we save it for Christmas or New Year's, something really special?" "Frank's friendship is special enough for me." Frank broke the seal on the bottle with reverence, like he was opening a time capsule. The cork came out with that satisfying pop that expensive whiskey makes. He poured himself a generous portion, about 3 fingers worth, in one of my good crystal glasses. "To family," he said, raising his glass toward me, "and to Sarah's incredible kindness." Michael's face was white as paper. Jessica looked confused, finally starting to realize something was wrong, but not understanding what. And Frank? Frank drained half that glass in one appreciative gulp. "My God," he said, closing his eyes in bliss, "this is perfection. Sarah, this is the best whiskey I've ever tasted." We finished dinner, made small talk about Jessica's job, Michael's latest projects, Frank's plans for retirement, normal family conversation. While Michael watched his father-in-law like he was a ticking bomb. Frank finished his first glass and poured another, then a third. He was having the time of his life, telling stories about the best whiskeys he had tasted over the years, comparing this bottle to legendary distilleries in Scotland. By 10 o'clock, he had consumed about half the bottle. By 11:30, Frank was unconscious on my living room floor. It started with nausea. Frank excused himself to the bathroom, and we could hear him being violently sick. When he came back, he was pale and sweating. "Must be something I ate," he joked weakly. But it got worse fast. Dizziness, confusion, slurred speech that had nothing to do with alcohol intoxication. Jessica started to panic as her father became increasingly incoherent. Michael tried to leave, actually tried to get Jessica and her dying father out of my house before the inevitable happened. But Frank collapsed in my living room at 11:42 p.m., convulsing and barely breathing. I called 911. The ambulance arrived within 8 minutes, but it felt like hours. EMT professionals swarming my living room, working on Frank with practiced efficiency, while Jessica sobbed and Michael stood frozen like a statue. "What did he consume tonight?" the lead paramedic asked, checking Frank's pulse and pupils. "We had pot roast for dinner. He drank quite a bit of whiskey, maybe half a bottle of Glenfiddich single malt. It was a gift from my son." Michael's head snapped toward me so fast I thought he might break his neck. For the first time, he realized what I'd done, what he'd done. His poison, intended for me, was now killing Jessica's father. At the hospital, the emergency room became a circus of activity. Frank was rushed into intensive care while doctors ran every test imaginable: blood work, toxicology screens, brain scans, heart monitors. Jessica was hysterical. "He's never been this sick. It can't just be alcohol poisoning. He drinks every day." Dr. Richards, the attending physician, came out to speak with us around 3 a.m. His face was grim. "Mr. Morrison has been poisoned. We found ethylene glycol in his system. That's antifreeze. The level in his blood suggests he consumed approximately 3 to 4 ounces of pure ethylene glycol mixed with alcohol." "That's impossible. We were at his daughter-in-law's house for dinner. We all ate the same food." "The poison was in the whiskey," Dr. Richards continued. "Someone deliberately contaminated that bottle. This is attempted murder, and we're required to contact the police." Michael tried to run, actually tried to walk out of that hospital while his father-in-law was dying from poison he'd intended for me. But Detective Morrison and Officer Cruz were already waiting in the hallway. "This is insane," Michael said, his voice cracking. "My mother, she must have done this. She's been acting strange lately, confused, maybe even delusional. She probably tampered with the bottle, thinking she was protecting herself or something." That's when I stepped forward with the evidence that would destroy him. "Detective Morrison, I believe I can clear up this confusion." I handed him my phone with 3 months of recorded conversations, the hidden camera footage showing Michael tampering with the bottle, bank records proving his financial desperation, medical documentation showing my illness only occurred after his visits. Michael's own voice filled that hospital corridor. "She's not drinking. I don't understand it. She should have cracked by now. The dose I've been giving her should be making her desperate for relief." Detective Morrison looked from the phone to Michael, then back to me. "Mrs. Patterson, are you saying your son has been trying to poison you?" "For 3 months, yes. He's been adding something to my coffee grounds every time he visits, making me sick, trying to drive me to drink that whiskey. When I gave it to Frank instead." That's when Michael completely lost control. The mask of concerned son finally slipped completely. "You crazy old bitch. You were supposed to drink it yourself. This is all your fault." And there it was. My son's full confession in front of 6 police officers and a dozen medical staff that he'd been trying to poison me. Jessica's reaction was almost as shocking as Michael's confession. Instead of standing by her husband, she immediately started trying to save herself. "I didn't know," she sobbed to Detective Morrison. "I swear I didn't know he was actually poisoning anyone. I thought he was just, I don't know, trying to make her nervous or something." But I had recordings of Jessica too. Her voice discussing timeline. "How much longer do you think this will take?" Her suggestions about being more direct when the poisoning wasn't working fast enough. They handcuffed Michael right there in the hospital hallway. Jessica collapsed, begging, pleading, trying to convince anyone who'd listen that she was innocent. As they led Michael away, he looked back at me with pure hatred. "I should have just pushed you down the stairs," he snarled. "Would have been faster." Those were the last words my son ever spoke to me as a free man. Frank survived, barely. He spent 3 weeks in intensive care, his liver and kidneys fighting to process the antifreeze that should have killed him. The doctor said if he'd consumed the entire bottle, which was Michael's original plan for me, he would have died within hours. Michael was charged with attempted murder in the 1st degree. Jessica was charged as an accessory and conspiracy to commit murder. The evidence was overwhelming: months of premeditation, clear financial motive, and Michael's own recorded confession. During sentencing, Michael was given one final chance to speak. I hoped, he might show some remorse, some recognition of what he'd done to the woman who'd given him life. Instead, he looked directly at me and said, "I wish you had drunk it." The judge sentenced him to 25 years for attempted murder. Jessica got 8 years as an accessory. The courtroom was silent when the gavel fell. That was 18 months ago. Michael is serving his sentence at the state penitentiary, 2 hours away from here. I've never visited him. I don't know if I ever will. People ask me if I'm angry, if I hate him. The truth is more complicated than that. I'm not angry anymore. Anger requires energy, and I've needed all my energy for healing. What I feel is grief. Not for the man who tried to kill me, but for the little boy he used to be. The son I loved for 32 years before learning he was capable of murder. Frank made a complete recovery, though it took 6 months of rehabilitation. His liver was damaged but functional, his kidneys scarred but working. The doctors called it a miracle. Apparently, his years of heavy drinking had actually given his body some tolerance to the ethylene glycol. Ironic, isn't it? Frank's alcoholism saved his life, while my sobriety almost got me killed. Frank and I became unlikely friends through this ordeal. He visits every Sunday now, bringing flowers from his garden and stories from his car dealerships. We drink coffee together, coffee I make myself, from beans I buy personally, and talk about everything except whiskey. "Sarah," he told me once, "you saved my life by giving me that poison. Sounds crazy when you say it out loud, but it's true. If you drunk it yourself, I'd have lost a dear friend, and Michael would have gotten away with murder." He was right. By trying to kill me, Michael accidentally saved Frank from his own slow suicide by alcohol. And by saving Frank, I inadvertently saved myself. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself, though that nearly broke me. It was accepting that the little boy I'd raised, nursed through chickenpox, taught to ride a bicycle, cheered for at every school play, that child was gone. Had been gone for years, maybe. The man who tried to poison me was a stranger wearing my son's face. Grief counselors have a term for what I experienced: ambiguous loss. It's when you're mourning someone who's still alive, but lost to you forever. In some ways, it's harder than regular grief because there's no funeral, no closure, no accepted social ritual for saying goodbye to someone who's destroyed themselves. I learned some hard truths through this nightmare. The most important one is that family isn't about blood, it's about choice. The people who truly love you will protect your sobriety, not exploit it. They'll support your healing, not sabotage it for their own gain. My real family turned out to be Mrs. Henderson, who watched my house and worried about me when I couldn't trust my own son. Dr. Martinez, who apologized profusely for doubting me and helped me through the trauma of betrayal. Frank, who became the father figure I never expected to have at 60 years old. Helen, my old nursing friend, who helped me understand the medical aspects of what Michael was doing and connected me with a toxicologist who testified at the trial. Even Detective Morrison, who treated me with respect and dignity when it would have been easy to dismiss an old woman's paranoid suspicions about her own son. Michael wrote me exactly one letter from prison. It arrived 3 months after his sentencing, and I almost threw it away without opening it. But curiosity won out over wisdom. "Mom, I know you'll probably never forgive me, and I don't deserve forgiveness anyway.
The money seemed so important at the time. Jessica convinced me that you were declining already, that we were just speeding up the inevitable. But I know now that's just an excuse for what I really am: weak, greedy, and evil. I tried to murder the woman who gave me life because I was too much of a coward to build my own. I'm sorry doesn't even begin to cover what I've done to you. I understand if you never want to see me again. I destroyed the most important relationship in my life for money that wasn't even mine yet. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I read that letter a dozen times. Part of me, the mother who kissed his scraped knees and sang him lullabies, wanted to write back, wanted to forgive him and try to rebuild something from the wreckage. But forgiveness isn't the same as reconciliation, and some betrayals cut too deep for sorry to heal. Michael didn't just try to kill me. He tortured me for months, made me doubt my own sanity, poisoned my coffee while asking about my health, used my husband's memory to manipulate me into drinking. That level of calculated cruelty doesn't deserve forgiveness just because he's finally feeling guilty. I kept Michael's inheritance, by the way. Every penny he was so desperate to get his hands on. Tom's life insurance, our combined retirement accounts, this house that holds 40 years of memories, all of it. You know what I did with his blood money? I donated half of it to the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence, specifically to fund programs for family members of addicts. People who've watched their loved ones destroy themselves and need support to maintain healthy boundaries.
The other half went to establish the Tom Patterson Fund for Elder Abuse Prevention at our local community center. Every dollar Michael tried to steal from me is now helping people like me recognize the warning signs before it's too late. Frank insisted on contributing to the fund, too. Said it was the least he could do since he'd stolen my whiskey. Between my contribution and his, we've been able to help dozens of seniors get legal support, security systems, and counseling services. Sometimes I wonder if I could have handled things differently, if there was some way to save Michael from his own greed and selfishness. If I had been a better mother, would he have turned out differently? But then I remember those recordings, the coldness in his voice when he talked about my death like it was a business transaction, the way he encouraged me to drink knowing it could kill me, the plans for accidents when the poisoning wasn't working fast enough. I didn't lose my son to a moment of weakness or desperation. I lost him because he made a series of calculated choices to value money over my life. And that's not something I could have prevented, no matter how perfect a mother I'd been. Accepting that truth, painful as it is, has set me free in ways I never expected. Today, I'm 60 years old and 5 years, 8 months sober. I have a chosen family that actually loves me, not my bank account. I have a purpose that fulfills me every day when I answer calls at the elder abuse hotline we established. And I have something Michael's betrayal couldn't take away from me: my self-respect. I still keep a bottle of whiskey on my mantle, right next to Tom's photograph. Not the poisoned one. That's evidence in a police storage facility somewhere. This bottle is a gift from Frank, purchased to replace the one that nearly killed him. He'll never open it because he quit drinking entirely after his brush with death. Every morning, I walk past that bottle on my way to make coffee from beans I buy myself, brewed in a machine only I have touched. And I remember 3 things. First, I am stronger than my addiction and smarter than my enemies. Second, I am worthy of love from people who actually know how to give it without strings attached. And third, the best revenge isn't getting even.
It's living well despite what others try to do to you. But you know what? That's not actually the end of my story. 6 months ago, I received a visitor I never expected. A young woman claiming to be the sister of Michael's cellmate. She had very specific questions about my daily routine, my security system, and whether I'd ever considered changing my will.
Apparently, Michael's been telling his fellow inmates quite a story about the inheritance he should have gotten and the crazy old woman who ruined his life. Some of these men have families on the outside who think I might be an easy target. They have no idea who they're dealing with. I've survived alcoholism, grief, betrayal, and attempted murder. I've outsmarted a son who underestimated his mother and turned his own plan against him. I've built a new life from the ashes of my old one. So if Michael's new friends want to try their luck, well, let's just say I'm ready for them. If there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this: trust your instincts. When something feels wrong, it usually is. When someone you love starts treating you differently, pay attention. When people show you who they really are, believe them the first time. The people who truly care about you will protect your sobriety, not exploit it. They'll support your healing, not sabotage it for their own gain. They'll stand by you during your darkest moments, not try to push you deeper into the darkness. Real love never tries to destroy you to get what it wants. And remember, you're stronger than you think, smarter than they believe, and more resilient than anyone gives you credit for, including yourself. Stay strong, stay sober, and trust yourself. You have everything you need to survive whatever comes your way. Thank you for listening to my story. If it helps even one person recognize the signs of manipulation or find the courage to fight back against betrayal, then sharing my pain will have been worth it. And if you're out there, Michael, listening to this somehow, I want you to know that I forgive you. Not for your sake, but for mine. I refuse to carry the poison of hatred in my heart. But forgiveness doesn't mean I've forgotten. And it certainly doesn't mean I'm not ready for whatever comes next. The whiskey you meant to kill me with saved another man's life. Your inheritance is now helping hundreds of people protect themselves from people like you. And your mother, the woman you tried to destroy, is stronger, happier, and more loved than she's ever been. I guess you could say your plan backfired spectacularly.